Hello to those of you who have just jumped on the call. Thank you for joining us. We are going to give attendees another 30 seconds or so to come in from the waiting room, and then we will kick off this session. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, welcome everyone. We are going to get started. Thank you for joining us today for our second Small Business Strong webinar of the year, Designing Your Blueprint for Success with Marketing Strategies. My name is Amber Haskell, and I am the Vice President and Executive Director of the Chamber Foundation. The Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce Foundation, the Chamber's nonprofit arm, expands economic opportunity by focusing on workforce and talent development and small business support. It invests in people and small businesses through programs that develop talent, cultivate future leaders, and promote inclusive growth, like this webinar we're having today. The Foundation's Small Business Strong initiative helps to connect small businesses across Massachusetts to local resources and provide information for small and micro businesses to grow and thrive. Before I introduce today's speaker, I have a few housekeeping items. Firstly, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the Chamber's YouTube page shortly after the presentation. For those of us who are joining live, please submit your questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature on the right-hand side of the screen. Making sure that you send it to all panelists, or you can email your questions to economicinclusion@bostonchamber.com. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. And now I am pleased to introduce today's speaker. With over 30 years of experience in marketing, communications, and business consulting, Eva Montebello has worked with organizations of all sizes, from large corporations to small and micro businesses. She's passionate about helping businesses develop innovative, impactful marketing strategies that spark growth. Known for her credibility, insight, and knack for tailoring solutions to fit each unique business, Eva loves empowering organizations to connect and thrive in today's competitive world. As the founder of Alpha E Consulting, Eva provides mission-driven, flexible marketing solutions. With services like fractional CMO and marketing point solutions, she helps companies build sustainable growth with customized strategies and branding that lasts. When she's not working with clients, you can find her winning community awards, like being named one of Haverhill's 25 most influential people in 2023, or the Eagle Tribune's Best Community Worker Award in 2022. She was also named a 2024 YWCA Northeastern Massachusetts Tribute to Women honoree. We make sure all of our speakers are excellent and this decorated. Eva holds a Bachelor of Science in Public Relations from Salem State University and a Master's of Communications Management from Simmons University. Her professional expertise and community involvement make her an inspiring and trusted marketing leader. And with that, I will pass it on over to Eva.
Thank you so much, Amber. I appreciate it. Just so we know where we all are, we are going to be talking about designing your blueprint for success with marketing strategies. There are so many marketing strategies out there, and unfortunately, it's impossible to be good at all of them, especially when you're a small business. So you really want to look at who are you attracting? What are you trying to get across in terms of your unique strategic positioning as well as your key messages. So we're going to go over a lot of different slides. So hold on to your hats because we are going to be flying through. Marketing is more powerful when it's connected. Back in the day, I think that people could go and do sales with just a business card, and their warm and charming personalities, which still is important. But now it's important to have a multi-channel marketing strategy. I was just speaking to someone, and he was saying, "Oh, this client doesn't have a LinkedIn profile. How am I supposed to learn more about them?" So it was really, really interesting to really have a conversation with the client and be like, you know what, maybe you need a couple more tools to add to your toolkit for marketing and sales. Marketing is in no by no means a standalone solution. Marketing is part of your sales toolkit, your lead generation toolkit, your PR toolkit, and your passionate philanthropy toolkit. So there's all of these different tools that you can add into all of these different categories to continue to bring forth sales for yourself, which is really the ultimate goal. If you're a nonprofit, then you're bringing forth things like volunteers or fundraising or attendance to events. So we already heard about me, so we're going to skip this one. There are 9 areas of marketing that you really need to consider. You need to first understand the foundation and the landscape of what's going on. You need to know who your competition are, and you also need to have a really solid standing on who you are as a business and what differentiates you. Next, you need to know who your target audience is. Is when you see, sometimes when I'm having a conversation in a networking meeting, I realize, oh, this is not my client, or, oh, this is my perfect client. And then there are people that you just don't know about that you always want to catch up for coffee with. So one of the key tricks is identifying the right clients or the right kind of influencers in your circles so they can get you to the right clients. You always want to craft a compelling message. Always start with the message. It's really, really important to make sure that your message is completely in line with what you do. And then you're going to select the optimal channels. Are you going to use digital? Are you going to have a website? Are you going to use social media? Is TikTok a social media tool that you're going to use? Or are you going to use LinkedIn? So it all depends on the other kind of 3 categories above it to which channels are the optimal channels. Then you're going to develop high impact assets. I have a client and he keeps saying to me, let's do our website. Let's do our website. I'm like, nope, we got to do our content first. So make sure your content is powerful and then you choose your platforms and then you create your assets. So it definitely goes in that order. If you don't do it in that order, you will have a lot more cycles that you'll have to go through because you'll be like, oh, I have this brochure, but it doesn't match my compelling messaging or it's not the right platform. So if you follow these steps, it's really helpful to do them in this order so that you have it's almost like a compass. You want to make sure that your compass is pointing in the right direction and you're not just shooting arrows to try to hit the target. A compass will have you going in the right direction from the start. Next up, promotions. So once you have all of your kind of foundational materials done, you're going to start promoting yourself. How do you drive awareness and engagement? And then you're going to start looking at where are where are your results coming from? How do I optimize the performance? And then you're going to have reporting. So kind of 7 and 8 are kind of sisters. Um, you know, what are you seeing from your results? And then how can you take them to the next level? And then it's always funny. Metrics always comes last. And I think technically it is last. But once you have some of your 1 through 8 done, you might want to start to develop yourself a scoreboard for yourself. Um, I remember having one job and we had performance bonuses. So we got to name our own performance bonuses. So you want to make sure that you're like, okay, I'm going to have 12 clients by the end of the year. I'm going to raise customer service scores by 30 points. I'm going to, you know, do whatever, whatever your goals are. I'm going to have 3 events that have 100 people each, this year. So really knowing what your metrics are and knowing how to accomplish them. And then whenever you're talking about metrics, this is like my secret to accomplishing your metrics is you have your minimum goal and then you have your dream goal. Always aim for your dream goal and you can pretty much guarantee that you'll reach your minimum goal, but oftentimes you can reach your dream goal. Okay, so timelines are funny things. Okay, so if we're being reasonable with our timeline and we want to do all of this in 4 quarters, we can. I was just listening to someone, love him or hate him, Elon Musk was having a conversation about timelines, and he was saying to his team, we need this new software system. And his team was like, nope, it's going to take anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half. And he turned the plane around, went back to the site, and they got it done in a weekend. So timelines are one of those things where you can make it as long or as short as possible. You could actually do this in a 4 month period. You could do this in a 4 week period. So whatever you're committed to is what you're up to. This is a perfectly fine 1 year program, but feel free to squeeze it if you can. First defining your goals, then your target audiences and their needs, then realistic timelines for each goal, and then you review your progress. Okay, so we're going to start with kind of the first category. So when you're designing a company, right? So you come up with your name, you come up with what you want to do, And then one of the things that's most important is brand compliance. When you're looking at brand compliance, you want to make sure that it's literally a carbon copy over and over and over again. You want to make sure that people know and recognize you, no matter where they see you. It takes about 10 visits or sightings before someone recognizes a brand. And one of the biggest examples of this is I was looking at some political campaign stuff, and I was like, why does this logo look so familiar? And the campaign person had used the Coca-Cola font for his campaign slogan, and his name. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's Coca-Cola. And I literally went to the refrigerator, found a Coca-Cola, and I was like, look at that. It was so interesting, which I do not think it worked in his benefit because I thought of Coca-Cola instead of his own brand. You also want to think about tone and voice. Are you selling a Harley Davidson or are you selling a Tiffany's necklace? It all depends on kind of who your audience is and what tone and type of sales you're going to be doing. You want to make sure that your message is always aligned and always in the same tone. Are you friendly and bubbly, or are you like business-like? Are you talking about IBM or Dell computers? Because and even if you look within brand in between verticals, Apple has a different tone than IBM. So it really makes a difference on what your messaging is going to sound like. And then you're going to start having, regulatory compliance. Are there any legal requirements that you're going to have to deal with when it comes to your brand? You also want to make sure that it doesn't match anyone else's. A local restaurant in my hometown had named their company, and then someone else had a different, had the same restaurant name, and they had to change all of their restaurant name. They had to change the sign on the restaurant. So, with a quick search, you can figure out the regulatory compliance as well as your competitive. And then, and then with regulatory compliance, you always want to make sure that you have a brand guideline, which I'm going to show you later in the process. And then also you're going to do a content review process and make sure that everyone has integrity in when they're dealing with your brand. These are some logos. Logos come in different types. I'm going to be actually doing a short video on logo development in a series that I'm working with with the chamber. So that's going to be coming up, and we'll go even deeper into that. But, first you want to create a striking logo that represents your brand's identity and values. You're going to look at color palettes, and like your color palette is like what you live and die by. So, when you have a color palette, you're going to load it into everything. You're going to load it into Word, you're going to load it into PowerPoint, you're going to load it into Canva and all of your other tools. And there are tools online where if you have a couple colors that you like, you can actually put them in and then see all of the accompanying colors that match it. And then you're going to think about the tone. When you think about um, MailChimp, it's an email marketing tool. MailChimp is different than Constant Contact. When you think about Starbucks, it's different than Dunkin' Donuts or Heavenly Donuts. They all have a different feel to them. Hermes has a different feel than the Body Shop, which is a different feel than Maybelline. So you really want to look at like what are all of the different kinds of feelings you want to elicit when you have a brand. And these are all things to consider. You're also going to think about your overall brand identity. Now, back in the day, before all this online stuff came to fruition, this is what we dealt with is great. We're going to have a stationery. We're going to have a pen made, a pencil made, a notebook made. We're going to have an envelope. We're going to have a gift bag. We're going to have a business card, and then there's all the swag stuff that's always included. What are you going to have for your giveaways if you're going to a trade show? Back in the day, we used to use CDs. I don't think we really use them anymore, but every now and then you'll see a CD come through. But these are really kind of fun things to think about because you really have to take your logo as well as all of your logo elements and bring them across a whole family of a system, whether it be in print or online. Okay. So next up, once you have your whole brand all designed and it's looking gorgeous, we're going to start talking about engagement and networking. So the easiest way to sell something is face to face. Second to that is video online. So those are the two easiest ways to sell things. And then obviously you have to have a vehicle to move them through the funnel of sales. Networking opportunities are a great way to do this. And I'm going to give you little tips as we go along. So every networking opportunity you go to, you should have a goal of walking away with one potential sale or you should walk away with like, okay, I'm going to have one hot lead, two warm leads, and five business cards. So you always want to have a goal of what you're going to accomplish in whatever event that you're going to go to. Attend interactive workshops. This could be meetings, this could be seminars, really where you're working like hands on to, move your business forward. Oftentimes, if you're attending these types of shops, you're meeting people that are in the same group. And then panel discussions. So, oftentimes, interactive workshops are when you get to actually work on things. Panel discussions are when people are just talking to you. So all of these different things are different ways to connect, learn from industry leaders, and then discover new opportunities for yourself. Always have a great elevator pitch. Elevator pitches are funny. I go one of two ways. I either try to get in and ask them what they do so I can customize my message. But you always want to definitely have your elevator pitch ready. Hi, my name is Eva. It's great to meet you. I work in marketing. I do digital, I do print, I do all these other things. And then I would usually say, what do you do? And then, as the conversation goes on, what do you want? What's the call to action? Hey, let's sit down for a cup of coffee. I oftentimes don't go in for a close because I feel like it's too pressury when you're meeting people. Sometimes what I say and what really seems to work when you're using your elevator pitch or meeting someone for the first time, you might want to say something like, I don't know if you know of anybody that might need my services, feel free to give them my card, or give me a call or touch base. Sometimes when you're like, okay, you don't want to definitely be like, do you need any marketing services? And like stare at them. It just gets a little bit strange. So, you know, if you know of anybody that needs any of these services, feel free to call me. And oftentimes people will be like, I need your services. And I'll be like, great, let's sit down and have a cup of coffee. So make sure you perfect your elevator pitch. Also, sometimes you sell multiple things or you have multiple offerings. You definitely want to have multiple pitches if you do that. And depending on what type of event you're going to, you also want to customize it. Okay, this is actually one of my favorite things is having ambassador programs while you're networking. We all have people that love us or we love that will actually serve as part of our brand ambassador team. Um, whether they're customers, like present or former, family members, your friends, your kids, your parents, if somebody like loves you and you can get them to be well enough versed in what you do, you can empower them with the tools to support and sell your brand. And then what you're going to do is you're going to amplify it. Once you take the people in your life and you start to get them to sell, or you take the customers, then when you amplify it, what you're going to do is you're going to do testimonials. You're going to do user generated content or authentic endorsements across your marketing channels. One great way to amplify is to do a podcast, and then bring your customers on and then interview them about them. And then at some point, your customer is going to say, yeah, I really appreciate, the website you designed for me, or, whatever they did. And you're going to just really have a conversation about, what happened and why it's powerful for them to have whatever tools or sales or products that you've sold them. Um, and it's really word of mouth marketing. It's one of like back in the day, I don't know if people remember this or they've seen it on television, but people used to go door to door to sell things like vacuum cleaners and air conditioners and, Girl Scouts, I guess, still do this a little bit, or your kids when you have, they're selling gift wrap or whatever they're selling for school. 92% of consumers trust recommendations from people they know over any other type of marketing. And people will create instant credibility and warm leads. So it's one of those things, but they also are great connectors. Like one other way to connect, and people do this to me all the time. Oh, I'm looking for someone to design a website, and someone will tag me. That's what you want to really kind of provide your friends with. Um, you customers already know about your value, and then you just want to teach them to do it, to teach them to share you intentionally. Ambassadors open doors that advertising and social media and websites and direct mail cannot access. And we supply the message, the visuals, and the offer, and they deliver the authenticity. When it's done right, the formula is simple. Ambassador's credibility plus our marketing tools equal trust and sales velocity. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to accomplish word of mouth marketing, and you know, it's just the quickest way to a sale. First, if anybody's ever done a multi-level marketing thing, they give you that sheet with all of the list your family, list your friends, list your business workers, list everyone. Um, that's what you want to start to do is you want to create a list of the top, 10 people that you think love you. I would say if you're a new business, start with your friends and family. If you have business partners, start with them. And then, as you gain more clients, add those to the circle. And then just, this kind of shows like 8 in the circle, but you really want to take this circle and you want to have it be one of those like explosion maps where you have like hundreds of people recommending you everywhere they go. So that's the game. Okay, and then you're going to design a brand and sales messaging sheet, and it's going to consist of 4 things. First, what's the vision, right? What's the vision of your company? What's your value proposition? Why are you better than other people? What makes you different? What makes you unique? Understanding, you also want to get your ambassadors to understand audiences. And that's something where you're going to do the audience profiles. It's almost when you take like an icon, and we're going to cover this in the social media side too. So you'll see a little bit more of a demographic profile. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then you also want to figure out what are the communications channels. Sometimes you'll have people tag your website. Sometimes you'll have people tag your social media. If you are in the beauty industry, Instagram or Pinterest are the way to go. If you are in the technology industry, you want to tag a page on your website, you want to tag someone's LinkedIn, like that. So you really want to figure out what are the communications tools that match perfectly to your clients. And then, you really want to look at testimonials, case studies. This one case study, has become a strategic brand ambassador. She's referred 17 new clients. She's featured the brand in 2 Instagram stories and even hosted a live Q&A/podcast with the founder, demonstrating, a powerful impact that, somebody that is not part of your company can actually make an impact. You can do printed case studies, say that you're running around to networking meetings, you have your business card, you have your corporate overview or your rack card, and then you can be like, hey, I also have a brand new case study. I'd love to share it with you. As you design case studies in different areas, you might want to start to take like a plastic folder, have a few of them in your plastic folder, and you can say, oh, you know what? I have a commercial HVAC person. Oh, guess what? I have a client like that already. Here's the case study that what I did with them. Or I work with a car dealership. Here's my case study of what I did with them. So as you start to meet clients in the same industry as other clients, then you can show your proof of concept and your credibility. Um, so I'm of the age where I love traditional marketing. I'm, one of those people that loves the printed, uh, the printed marketing piece. Are we going to have a newspaper ad or a magazine ad or a billboard? Are we going to have a piece of direct mail or a corporate overview? Um, Telemarketing, in my opinion, only works when it's very, very, very targeted and specific. I can tell you, I worked on one telemarketing campaign where I was working with radio stations, and the company I was working with was a Halloween bag company. So basically, I called all of the radio stations and I was like, oh, we do custom bags for Halloween, and then we print your logo on it. And I think the sales were like 9 or 10%, which is actually really great for an outbound sales conversation. But it's finding the right person, finding the right solution, getting their email, sending it out like that. And then trade shows is another traditional marketing, where you can showcase your offerings and your network with your key target market. These provide a tangible personal approach to clients in a physical environment. So, these are some of the classic tactics, direct mail, brochures, business cards, postcards, and then swag. I have to say, I'm a big fan of swag. Every nonprofit event, we always have a swag bag somehow, and I always end up running it. But there are all types of swag that you can buy on Amazon now. You can get like 300 keychains for relatively inexpensive. Like I think I got them for $80. You can do pens. You can get 300 pens for probably around, $100. And then there are some pens that you can get for 10 cents each, all over the place. I'm trying to think of some of my other people love stress balls. The my other favorite one is a water with a belly band. So you basically can buy a belly band on Amazon, print them out, and then put them around the belly of the water. And then I would also secondarily put take a punch and put a business card around the neck. I have a really great swag sales conversation. There was this real estate woman, and she had grandchildren, and every time she went to one of her grandchildren's games, she brought 2 cases of water. She didn't do the belly band, but she did the business card. So one day someone called her and they said, "Oh, come out." She was a real estate person. "Come out to my place. I'd like to sell my mansion." So it was on the edge of the waterfront, like a $2 million mansion. And as she's, taking the new client information, she goes, how did you hear about us?" And she goes, "Oh, like 10 years ago, I was at this sporting event and I was so thirsty and there was water there and someone offered me one and I had your business card. I put it in my wallet and that was about, 10 years ago or so." And the real estate person said, "If I got one sale out of the 10 years of water I delivered, it was well worth doing it." So find your piece of swag and stick to it. Um, the other areas that I love to work with, as you heard earlier, this is where my degree is, public relations and media and philanthropy. They all go hand in hand. So if you're doing anything and it's interesting enough and you think that the newspaper or the radio station or a local magazine will pick you up, write a press release. Use Chat GDP and, put all your details in there and say, write a press release for me. And it'll get pretty close. I feel like when I use that for press releases, I probably can get about 90-95% there. Um, Send out a press release. If you're bold enough and it's appropriate and trendy enough, you can also send it to the local radio stations or TV stations. Every now and then, they'll pick up a local community member and you'll be able to get yourself on local television. And sometimes, if, depending on what you do, I have clients that have been on Good Morning America. We put them on a plane, fly them out to New York, and they do a promotion. It's only like 5 minutes, but it's well worth it, and it really drives in the business when you're on those one to many type mediums. Community involvement. This is actually a great way to get known. To show your heart and your authenticity to people, and then also introduce yourself. So say that you're doing an event. One of the events that I work on is I'm part of this canoe race, and we raise money for a veterans organization and a local food shelter. So basically, I go in as Eva Montebello to the local banks. I'm like, "Hi, I'm Eva. We're having this canoe race. Would you like to sponsor it?" And then you hand them your real business card. You don't hand them your canoe race business card if you have one, but I don't. But you hand them your business card. So what you're doing is you're saying, "Okay, so me, Eva Montebello from Alpha E Consulting, is doing this volunteer work," and you're opening doors. Then you add that person on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever they are, and then you really start to build that relationship and develop the goodwill. And it's so interesting because it's one of those things where you always want to make sure that you show yourself authentically to the world, and one of the ways to do that is through passionate philanthropy. The other thing is you want to deal with your reputation management. Don't put anything online that someone is going to ding you for. It's one of those things, and if you do, own it. My mother has this great line. She goes, "If you can't do it in the light of day, don't do it anywhere." So make sure that whatever you're putting on social media or you're saying in the public, you want to make sure that your reputation is always squeaky clean. So nobody gets you in a gotcha. Okay. One of my business lines that I have everyone, it's a love-hate because it's crisis communications. Every now and then someone gets into a pickle and you need to get them out of it, or someone's giving someone a hard time and you need to, put the communications back on track. You want to try to stay on the highest level of your best self always. And build a press kit. Whether you do it with, a corporate folder, or, you have a letter in a folder, you just need a few things for a press kit, and it's always good to have. And you always want to make sure, especially if you're doing something that's trendy. I just met with someone today, and they are doing programs for high schoolers to get into college. I was like, it's so trendy because because college is so expensive right now. And it's such a great program that they have. And I said, we need to do a media alert in you. So let's do a media alert and wrap it with a press kit, and then, send out a press release about something. And then, have you be the main media contact for anything educational or college related, or what, or, a whole bunch of, you develop the hashtag so that people know that what you're standing for. Um, Doing good is good marketing. So that's one of the things that I've always said. And I always have this conversation about energy, right? And I'm transitioning to a little bit of a sales conversation. So back in the day, we used to say for every 10 contacts, you can probably close one sale when you start, right? And then as you get better talking about your message and talking to people and honing in on what sells well, then you start to move into, maybe you're selling one to every 9 people, one to every 7 people, one to every, 5 people. So when I look at like who I am now, I definitely leave every meeting with 5 business cards and 2 solid leads. So that's my commitment. And basically, you're not allowed to leave. My goal for myself is I'm not allowed to leave an event until I meet that minimum. So being successful in business is not easy. And you really have to get out of your own comfort zone. But doing good helps you get there. So if you are nervous or shy or working through your message, doing the volunteer work thing, the passionate philanthropy thing is a great way to practice and double up on doing good in the world. Digital and social media. Okay, this is like a whole, like, there's so many social media platforms. I actually have to also post. I'll try to get a different thing, but there's a social media grid with every single social media um, thing in the world. It's from an organization called Overdrive Interactive. And when I first saw it, I was like, holy heck, I can't believe there's so many things in there. But you want to make sure that at the very least you have your social media platforms. Those are free. Those are easy. Digital advertising, you want to make sure that anything that you do is search engine optimized, as well as making sure that you're putting in hashtags to pick up that, you're going to have your keywords in everywhere. And then also you can do a second one that's a hashtag, and the repeatedness will help you pick up and have a little bit of organic stickiness when someone is looking for what you do. You want to make sure that you design really relevant and interesting content marketing, and make sure that you're dealing with your clearly defined audience. Content is king. There's multiple ways to kind of share content. You can either do original content, which is, mostly words, and then you throw in a picture, or you can have custom designed content where you are designing your own graphics. Canva is amazing with this. Adobe has a new product called Adobe Express, which I think is free. And they also do some really great content marketing that are both visual and text. So you want to definitely have those two games, as well as another thing for content marketing is curated content, where you're taking someone else's content and you're sharing it, because you don't actually have to create all the content yourself. You can literally take from some of the leaders in the industry. HubSpot has a lot of great marketing content. I sometimes share that stuff. You just really want to, and you can put together something called a Google Alert. You might want to write that down, Google Alert, and set up what are the keywords in your industry. And whatever the keywords in your industry are, you can put all those keywords into Google and it will pull up all the articles for you. And then you can pick and choose what you want to do. Usually with my clients, I share a month's worth of content out, and then I keep an eye on everything. So if anything else comes up, I can pop it up. Websites, when you do a website, it's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be a total time commitment for you, or it's going to be, I don't want to say expensive, depending on how big your website is. You can get a really great basic website for 500 to $1,000. You know, um, I recently quoted out a website that had about 40 pages, and I think it was like $8,000. So, depending on what you need, and then depending on what you need inside of your website. Do you need a storefront? Are you integrating some type of uh, email newsletter? What are the components? Are you trying to capture leads? Are you trying to run video and run classes on your website? All of those different components come together to figure out, what you're going to have on your website and how much it's going to cost. If you know what you want, your website person can tell you how much it's going to cost. Email marketing. Email marketing is great when you have a live audience that loves you. Just be really careful with email marketing, not to spam. I don't know if anybody's ever done this. You see something awesome on Facebook and then you add yourself, and then they literally email you like 4 times a day. And I'm like, I can't get myself off the email list fast enough. Um, all and the great thing about all of the digital technologies is there's always analytics and reporting, and all you have to do is pop it open and look at it. So that's the best thing about digital is all the analytics are programmed in there, whether it's Google Analytics, Meta is on Facebook and Insta, digital advertising. Like if you're doing like an online ad or something, they can actually tell you how many people clicked on it or looked at it. So those are like a really amazing, digital is really amazing for having understanding how things flow. And then when you're looking at your social media, you're going to optimize your social media strategy based on who's on social media. I have to tell you, I sell out events on Facebook. Do with, we have a Facebook page for the business or the event, and then we have a Facebook event page so people can invite their friends to it. And then I boost ads on Facebook. So that's one of my favorite places to do things. And everyone that's a professional in business should have a LinkedIn account. Um, did, and it's interesting because a lot of, I have a couple clients that are like, I should be on TikTok. I should be on TikTok. And then I was like, I personally don't do TikTok, but they'll put themselves on TikTok and they'll say something like, oh, I got 1,500 views. I said, did anyone click on the ticket sales link? And they were like, nope. So, you've got to kind of figure out, is it good to have views without any results? Maybe, or is it better to have, a paid ad that's super, super specific that is actually converting? So that's the funny thing about social media is you really need to figure out, you know, it's like a chicken or the egg thing. It's like, which is going to work? And sometimes you have to, do A/B testing when you're, testing, one ad against the other or one time against the other or one social media against the other. But luckily, all the statistics are in there. So you can really start to assess what's going on in the background. This is one of the handouts that I'm going to be sending out after, or the chamber is going to be sending out after, and it's a profile of social media platforms and then the customer profiles. So on Facebook, the medium age is like 32 to 49. Medium salary is about 75,000. High rate of homeowners. Most of them are college educated, slightly more female, family oriented, community oriented, likely to follow local businesses and events, uses Facebook groups for niche interests. Completely agree with that. And then you're going to look at all the other ones, like where do people fall into place? So wherever your customers are, you're going to really customize. Pinterest, I don't know if the statistic, I haven't looked at the Pinterest statistic in a while, but Pinterest used to be something like 85% women. So if you're going for, oh, there it is, it's 70 to 80% women. So really, really high on the women's side. So if you have anything that's female sales focused, that's the great place to go, but you'll be getting that in the mail. Um, Additional website and online tools, blogs. Blogs help you with search engine optimization and driving traffic to your website through blogs with that are heavy with keywords. You want to make sure that your website is mobile friendly and responsive. So if someone's, when you're looking at your screen, it's horizontal. When you're looking at your phone, it's tall. You want to make sure that it looks good both ways, and you just have to really, look at it on your computer, go home, look at it on your tablet, and then look at it on your phone. So make sure that it works everywhere. Make sure that your SEO is optimized. basically what you can do is you can take your corporate overview and put it into ChatGPT and say, please provide me with CEO tags for this web page. And it will literally come up with all of your meta tags for you. And then, I have to say, ever since I've been using a scheduling software, I spend so much less time dealing with calendars. There's Calendly, there's Acuity, there's I think another one called Harvest. Google has one, in the Google Work product. So you can, get a scheduling software. It works, I think most of them work with Google Calendars. And you can choose, I have meetings on Tuesdays, Thursdays. It just really helps instead of dealing with the back and forth. Here, pick a time that works for you. So if you're just starting out in business, definitely do a scheduling software. Um, so the other thing is as you begin to gain clients and gain relationships, you always want to make sure that you're focusing on your credibility, your authenticity. You want to focus on how well you do what you do, or how great your product is. And you want to have conversations with people that are engaged in you talking about your business to other people, whether, you're talking, I was at an event last night and I was talking to someone and they were like, oh my gosh, you do really great at events. I really love that event that you did last year, blah, blah, blah. And so, I was having a conversation with someone about one of my events and someone's like, what event is this? So literally what you're doing is you're growing the conversation about whatever you're doing. And that's really important. You're going to always like foster relationships. I know that it's so hard to remember everyone's name and remember what everyone does. But when you're adding them on like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, those help to really map faces to names. And it's a really great way to be responsive to what people need. And then you want to make sure that you have consistent communication, whether you're posting on Facebook, whether you're sending emails, or whether you're going to the same like networking groups. I have a friend that went out and joined like every chamber. I'm like, how many nights a week are you going to go out? And he was like, yeah, one or two. And I said, well, wouldn't it be better to join one chamber and then go to a lot of their events? So you can, build a relationship. And then if you're going to join a different chamber, maybe do that in 2 months, and focus on that. And then, drop it down to like, once a month, you make sure you go to every single chamber meeting. So, different chamber. So it's just really important to, make sure that your credibility is good and you're doing great work, foster the relationships that you're building, and then having consistent communication with people. And then building strategic partnerships. I was at an expo yesterday and someone does IT services for small businesses. He goes, we would be the perfect partners. That is the best, right? When someone comes to you and they're like, oh, what do you do? And then I'm like, what do you do? And then literally we both were like, we would be perfect partners. He was like, I don't do websites, I don't do social media, but I see when people's social media goes down or they need websites because I'm fixing their IT systems. And then I have to tell you, I have people that are always dealing with IT issues. So I was like, you're going to be my new best friend. When you have an IT guy that does small businesses, he goes, I deal with one person to 50 people, which is a great place if you are a small business. So find someone like that is a complementary business partner, and then you can leverage it. Be a thought leader. Okay, this one scares people, so don't be afraid. You can totally do it. You can start easy, start a blog. A good blog is anywhere between 400 and 600 words. Make sure it's keyword heavy. Add a really beautiful photo or a couple of photos. You can also do a video blog if you're so comfortable, but that's a little bit more bold. And then the next up is speaking engagements. There are easy ways to start breaking into speaking, talking to your local service clubs. Go talk to your local chamber of commerce. Maybe you can have a little lunch and learn where you will lead like a 20-minute class about whatever you do, or you can be part of a trade show or an industry fair or an expo, and just sell your stuff at a table. There's all different types of ways to get into speaking engagements. And sometimes tabling is a great way to break into speaking, because then what you're doing is you're going to have like hundreds of people come up to you. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? I feel like I said the same thing yesterday to like about 200 people. So, tabling and speaking engagements are great ways to really hone your message and get good at really kind of working on the fly. And then if you're really bold, you can launch a podcast. Create a podcast, have guests on. You may have your one or two favorite people that you bring on all the time. I think when I think of Joe Rogan, I think of that guy Theo Vaughn. He's always on. I think of a couple people that he has on, like he has a couple comedians on the regular. So when you're a podcaster, have your favorite people that come on when you have a gap, or have your clients come on, have your partners come on, have you know, whatever, just have a roundtable conversation. Podcasts are one of the greatest ways to really get your word out there in a one-to-many kind of way. And it lives on, so you can also make sure you do really good SEO and categorize it. So in this podcast, I talked about digital marketing, websites, social media, like put it in the body of the description on YouTube, and then put it in the hashtags, and then say you're talking to someone that's like, I don't even know where to start with my website. Then you can grab that podcast and be like, hey, I have this podcast, take a look at it, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I can walk you through the process of designing a website. So you can use all of these different tools, whether it be a blog or a podcast, as supportive sales materials when you bump into clients that need a little bit of help. Guerrilla marketing. So I'm working on an event with a local brewery, and it's one of my good friends is does marketing at the brewery, and she's like, let's go do some guerrilla marketing. I was like, okay. So basically what guerrilla marketing is face-to-face marketing in the local area. So she's a local brewery. She's like, let's go walk around town and talk to all the small businesses and invite people to stuff. We're doing an animal related event. So she's like, let's go to the local pet shelter. Let's go to the dog food store. Let's go to the grooming place. So really looking at you're leveraging surprise, you're bringing your marketing material, you're walking around, and you're maximizing limited resources. So and then it also gives you more of an opportunity to take your pitch and take it out to the public again. So it's a really great way to do it. It's also a great way to spend time with friends. Oftentimes, I feel like I'm so busy with life, and it's a fun way to walk around town and chat with your friends and go and promote something. And then, always think about ways to be creative and be memorable. Whether you are doing something like sidewalk chalk, or having a branded experience, or, doing something fun or funny, you can really want to figure out how to separate yourself from the crew. Um, it's a dangerous saying, but I'm going to say it. All publicity is good publicity. You just have to figure out how to make it good publicity. So if you bump into something and you have a blip in the road, say your website goes down during a podcast or something, you can say, oh my gosh, look, this is what we learned. If you ever are doing a podcast and you have bumps in the road, let me tell you how to fix them. You can always, take lemons and make them into lemonade. You just have to really think creatively and oftentimes think on your feet. But always be creative and always be memorable and try to be bold. Business owners, if you're a small business owner, if you're a business owner of any type, being bold is going to get you to where you want to go faster than, you know, being reasonable. And it's really just an invitation and something to consider. Okay, let's close the loop. So, some of the key takeaways are, make sure that your tools, your brand, make sure your brand is solid, and then your content is king, and then your tools are perfect, and then you're promoting it, and then you're out in the world. Always encourage feedback and questions. There are times where people are not going to like your product or service. Listen to feedback. Try not to take it personally. I know that people have said things to me, and I've been like, oh my gosh, I'm going to cry, but don't cry until you leave. So make sure that, you listen to any criticism. Oftentimes it's not constructive, but listen to all criticism and try to foster a dialogue to create an opportunity for further engagement. It's, there's always an opportunity in everything. You always want to think about conversion, right? So marketing doesn't mean anything if you are not actually selling and closing deals. So make sure you go through the whole process. You're capturing leads, you're nurturing your leads, you're qualifying your leads, you're pitching, you're overcoming objections, and you're closing. This can be done in 5 minutes, or this can be done in years. So it's one of those, it's the same thing about timing. You can take a year to do it, or it can be literally 2 minutes. So it just depends on your where you are in your business mind and where the other person is in their process of purchase. So sometimes you'll be surprised. Those really quick sales are fantastic. So, really pray for those. Um, definitely make sure that you are keeping keeping your eyes on your competitors as well as any trends or patterns. There are definitely some trending apps that are really great to watch things. Make sure that you are dealing with your emergency protocols and mobilizing if you need them, and then, fixing things and then continuing to monitor and measure. Crisis management. I think we've covered this a couple times, so we'll just, make sure that you're dealing with what you need to deal with. If you have something that's in the public eye, get to them sooner than later. If you ignore a media crisis, then they're going to make up what they want, or they're going to take the saying of whatever they're hearing on the street. So, I was dealing with a piece of legislation, and we had a quorum, so we'd had 2/3 of the legislature ready to sign on, which is just a really great thing that happened. And someone called to complain and thought it was like a group of people protesting. It wasn't like my team of people that I was working with. And then I took that opportunity and I flipped it over and I said, "Hey, guess what? We have a quorum and we have all these other things going on and we would love you to write about it." And so I took something that was initially a crisis and I flipped it over. Whenever you have a crisis, the question is how do you flip this over as quickly as possible? Um, Make sure you keep an eye on your metrics. Make sure that they're always going in the right direction. Sometimes metrics get flat. Like when I get really, really busy and my metrics get flat, it's totally fine because then sometimes you have too much work and you stop putting on social media, or you stop, going to events because you're so busy. You just want to make sure that you are keeping some type of standard ongoing, even though you're full, and then, always keep an eye on that. Okay. I feel like I did this one before. Marketing framework. We already did that. Okay, so this is one of the documents that you're going to get, your integrated marketing blueprint. The first one is basically a worksheet on how to work yourself through the blueprint, and then you're going to have a marketing action checklist. And then I've included a template of a style guide where you're going to keep track of what are your colors, what are your fonts, online fonts versus print fonts and colors and fonts. Yeah, those you may have two sets of them and you just may have to like do a really good job working to match them. Um, and then that's about it. So I am part of Small Business Strong and I'm one of the consultants in the Merrimack Valley. If you are a small business, we would love you to join us in our first call program. And then one of the next seminars that are coming up are with Algiera Marsh, and she's going to be working on a SDO certification webinar. So if you're not certified in Massachusetts there are there are different areas you can be certified in. I think it's minority, women, and veteran are three categories. If there are others, please feel free to jump in. But those two resources are great. And I want to thank Small Business Strong and Amber and Kajia for inviting me to do this presentation and the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So thank you so much. If there are any questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask them.
We have some questions for you and some good
Awesome.
ones. So, for those of you who are watching live, I'm gonna try to get through some of the quick ones and then give you kind of one even that's a little bit more open-ended.
Okay.
So, kind of on like the more tactical, how much swag would you recommend bringing to a trade show? Do you have like a rule of thumb?
I do. So, okay, so say that there's 1,000 people that are going to come to a trade show. I would do at least 1/3 of that. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Um,
And then
okay.
I'm sorry, keep some
Go
of it
ahead.
under the table. Don't give it all away. So, and then make sure, I would put out a half of it. And then, he who gets there first is great. And then, when you get to your other half, just put a couple out. And because you want to make sure that your target audience gets your swag. Sorry.
Not the people like me who are just like free stuff. Let me just get it all.
Love that stuff.
Okay, what's the comparative value of physical business cards versus digital business cards or other digital methods. So, should someone spend $50 on business cards or $50 on an online ad?
Um, I definitely think that everyone should have business cards. And it's so strange. I literally have a whole table. I'm doing a project. I don't know if you can see this. I'm doing a whole project on electronic business cards with a QR code. So, business cards, I don't know if anybody's ever been having a conversation and they're like, oh, yeah, go visit my website. I don't know how you feel when someone says that to you, but when someone says that to me, that's like, oh my goodness, it's like one more thing I have to remember, and among the 20,000 things I have to do, So I think a physical business card, I often give people a business card and I say, oh yeah, throw this in your wallet, right? I always want my business card in everyone's wallet. The other thing is when you're using a digital business card and you want to make sure that the type of business card you have, you can populate it with all keywords, right? So in my just I have the longest description with every keyword and everything that I possibly do in there because they're like, wait a second, I met this girl at the Merrimack Valley Chamber and she does websites. So, and I think her name was Eva, right? So if you search your phone for Eva and websites, my business card will be pulled up because it's all inside the electronic business card. Digital ads, digital ads, it depends on how much your budget is. The more money you have, the more you can do. So that's a whole other, that's really customized. I would have to talk to somebody one-on-one about that.
We might have to do a whole webinar on it.
Exactly.
All right, and then for people who have asked questions that unfortunately we didn't get to answer, don't worry. We can send your questions, and then when we send an email to you all with slides and information, we can answer your questions as well. Excuse me. So one more open-ended question, Eva, is someone said, I remember Steve Jobs once said Apple isn't going to talk about the performance of an Apple computer. It's going to talk about how the Apple computer makes someone feel. So can you speak to, marketing, and how you feel versus like metrics?
Yes, absolutely. That's how you sell. So human beings are emotional. They're your emotion, there's a whole bunch of different categories. There's emotional, intellectual, social. So what are you trying to tap into with your product? So let's say that I'm selling my service, right? So I'm going to be, I often say, when I design your websites, I do everything for you. I do the photos, I do the content, I do the architecture, I do everything. Because sometimes, and you can tell, you also have to take the cues from your audience. I'm so overwhelmed. I have to do a website. I don't know what I'm doing, and that's where how are you going to take all of the problem or those concerns and turn them into opportunities for yourself? And that's really where you're like, you know what, we hold your hand all along the way, and this is the process. We're going to talk about this and we're going to meet every week and we're going to, and so what you do is you bring them through your process and it's a build upon. That's the other thing. It depends, are you selling a pen or are you selling $1 million software system? So it all depends on, you know, the $1 million software system. We totally process everything from soup to nuts. Then you don't have to, your IT is all in one place and your ERP is all in one place. So what you're really trying to do is make sure people, and this is where, authenticity, credibility, and really your ability to communicate what you deliver in the world of feelings, as well as tactical and strategic things, is really important. But you have to know what their problem is, and you have to know how to solve it. And then you have to really make sure that they know that you're in it with them.
Amazing. Eva, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all of this incredible knowledge. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this session. We really appreciate it. As Eva mentioned, we have an upcoming event about getting your business certified through the Supplier Diversity Office, as well as our first call program, which is here to help small and micro businesses get connected to free resources in your local communities. You can find more information about both of those at bostonchamber.com and click on the Small Business Strong tab. Thank you all again for joining and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.